Good evening, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Cambodia Global Dialogue or Southeast Asia TV. Tonight we'll be touching into a subject that I'm not familiar at all. For the whole year that we have this program, we have not got into this particular thematic, but I thought that it's time we start venturing into something that not very much from the last year program, where we talk a lot about economic, trade, globalization, regionalization, a lot of stress on Cambodia future chairmanship next year. But I think that in the context of developing the country, the issue of governance is very important. And today I decide to have a development partner from the Asian Development Bank who have a big program, you know, in the area of decentralization and deconcentration, to come and have a little introduction a bit into the subject. And we hope that this could help sort of like provide a better understanding on where does good governance, decentralization, deconcentration fits into the larger economic development of this country. I have with me today Mr. Juan Luis Gomez. Juan, can I call you Juan?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you.
Yes. Well, Juan, before we get into the subject, perhaps you should say a bit about the background a bit, you know.
Very briefly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm from Spain.
Yes.
I'm, of course, working for the Asian Development Bank, and I'm
Yes.
responsible for most of the portfolio of the bank operations in support of decentralization reforms
Yes.
and local government finance reforms in the Southeast Asia department.
Yes.
And that includes projects in Philippines, Indonesia, and right now in Cambodia.
Cambodia. Good. Well, you know, the Royal Government of Cambodia and the Asian Development Bank, they have signed a 3-year strategic partnership where we focus on various areas, you know, in terms of private sector development, in terms of infrastructure, and D&D is definitely one major component part of that. One, you know, a lot of people talk about D&D like that, you know, like MDG, UNDP, what are all these acronyms, but D&D is definitely something that not everybody know what it is, aside from saying D&D.
Right.
Perhaps you could demystify a bit, you know, the difference between the first D, which is decentralization, right, and the second D, which is deconcentration.
With pleasure. These are definitely complex concepts and complex topics. By decentralization, what we generally understand,
Yes,
is the transfer of authority,
yeah,
of decision-making power on public functions,
yes,
to lower levels of government, to
Okay.
subnational levels of administration and subnational levels of government,
Okay.
and even to the private sector
Oh.
in some occasions. Decentralization may involve 3 main different dimensions: administrative,
okay,
political, and also fiscal decentralization, as it refers to the assignment of revenue sources and expenditure responsibilities across levels of government. When you decentralize
Okay.
the responsibility to deliver a service,
yeah,
for instance, primary education,
Okay.
or vaccination campaigns,
oh, okay,
or the maintenance of rural roads and the building of new rural roads,
yes,
what you decentralize is the authority with it.
yeah,
So you expect subnational authorities to decide on the projects that are going to be implemented,
Yes.
and on the cost of those projects,
Okay.
and also execute
Okay.
their budgets.
yeah,
The difference with deconcentration
yes, yes, okay,
is that in deconcentration, we're not talking about a transfer of authority. The deconcentrated functions are just performed by line ministries' offices that are situated at the local level. But the accountability relationships
Okay.
remains with the central government
central
level.
government.
Whereas in decentralization, with decentralized functions, the accountability
Okay.
is just to the local councils, and from the local councils to their jurisdictions
okay,
and constituencies.
yeah. And since when has the government really started tackle? Because, you know, all along since I was in the government a long time ago, we have the program, the good governance, and we mentioned a lot about it. But where are we now, and when did we start? What's the progress?
It's already been a long process in Cambodia, and it started with the law in 2001 for the commune and councils. And it followed with the first elections for communes in 2002.
Yes.
That initial focus at the commune level
Okay.
has been recently has received further support with the 2008 organic law on provincial district municipalities and cans. The current situation, or the focus right now of decentralization reforms, is at the district and municipal level, and of deconcentration reforms at the provincial level of government.
Yes.
We've come a long way. I think that Cambodia has been able to prepare a very rich and fruitful policy and regulatory framework right now. There's still several elements of it that need to be further development, and we are right now at the core of the first phase of implementation, when the first functions will soon, expected by the end of next year, be decentralized to local authorities, and when the elements of the financing system, the assignment of revenue sources of funds from the central government to district and municipal administrations will be conducted very soon in year 2012.
Okay. So we come quite a long way. You know, for me, as I said in my introductory remark, is that this program is all about positioning Cambodia in the region, you know, best practice. How can we make Cambodia more performing? What will be the lesson learned from other countries in the region in a similar thematics? From the development side, how do you see the link between D&D, deconcentration or decentralization, as it linked to the effort of the government, you know, to develop its country?
And that's the key question, right? What is decentralization going to do for me?
Exactly.
And and the link or the potential of decentralization reforms rests with the fact that we have a country in Cambodia and in many others around the region where there are sharp differences in the level of key socioeconomic and development indicators. And those differences are also perhaps prompted because the needs of the local populations differ from one province to another.
I see.
The needs in terms of public health may differ, the needs in terms of primary education may differ, in terms of infrastructure needs. So when you have a system of government that is truly centralized, there is less flexibility to adapt the services that you need to provide in those different areas to the particular local needs and preferences of the population. By bringing local administration and this decision-making power to the local level, they will be more able, that's the promise of decentralization, to adapt their expenditure and the services to the needs of the population. And that community participation on that decision-making process, by selecting the representatives, but also through participatory budgeting and evaluation mechanisms, is what really can help and facilitate that the services that are provided are the ones that are needed at the local level.
You mentioned these the various element or approach to decentralization, and you mentioned something about also not just decentralizing from the central government to the provincial government, but also the stakeholder, which is the private sector. Am I correct in that one?
Correct.
And if we talk about the private sector, which to me, I'm a fervent believer that the private sector play a big role in the development of a country, whether at the national or at the subnational level, right? Where do they fit? Where does the private sector fit?
In many different ways. In many different ways. If we were to focus on what is the local economic development process, which is critically important, and is also a function and a responsibility over which local governments, really at local levels of administration, can make a difference in improving this process. You want to have, for a start, participatory processes for the definition of your strategic plans and development plans at the local level that involve private sector representatives. so that you get their views as to what are the competitive advantages of the regions and the different districts and municipalities, what industries perhaps offer the greatest potential for job creation and for economic growth. You want to have that, because those are perhaps, in the basis of those competitive advantages, you should actually structure other strategies, like for instance infrastructure provision, or if you could vocational and technical education as well, to serve the needs in terms of young people that are going to join the labor market in the future with the right skills that are needed by those industries. In many different ways. Another aspect in which the private sector is becoming more and more important is on the creation of private and public partnerships. And these are partnerships, associations between the private sector representatives and government at the different levels, mostly for the construction of public infrastructure in many different regimes.
Like, for example, after this big flood, we're going to be, this government going to be, you know, under a lot of pressure to not only to rehabilitate the road, but the lesson learned is that, you know, this big flood is a big gauge, you know, to say, how high is that national road? Because until you have the biggest flood, you don't know whether your road is really high enough. But that's the exception on the national road. But there's a lot of subnational road where the role of the private sector can kick in, you know. So this is where you see their contribution, right?
Absolutely. There's potential there that needs to be explored. We have seen perhaps these associations between the private and the public sector be more prevalent on larger infrastructure projects. The build and transfer, operate and transfer kind of agreements over which private sector contributes to the investment and the construction of infrastructures, and then they get the right to operate that infrastructure for a certain number of years to recover their investment.
Isn't it a sort of BOT?
Yes. I mean that would be one of the modalities that we can explore. I think, however, that when we talk about rural areas and local economic development processes, the projects that we'll be talking would be simpler in nature. And what is most important, I think, is to form a larger coalition of stakeholders at the local level, to be able to identify what are really those competitive advantages of the locality and how those can be supported with local infrastructure and by other means as well. And is without that association, without the input of the private sector into the local economic development plans, then we almost guarantee that there will be no success.
Other stakeholder, the commune themselves, the commune chief, the commune council, where do you see an empowerment for that process?
By all means. We have seen, I think there was, and rightly so, perhaps, a lot of the skepticism about the role the communes could play after the approval, the enactment of the 2001 law and the subsequent elections. But what we have seen is that the communes have proved to be great stakeholders in the process of development. They have been able to implement very important projects, mostly in the area of rural roads, but also other aspects of infrastructure. And they have been developing their capacities very quick, which actually is a great precedent right now that the focus of the decentralization reforms is moving to the district and municipal level, where there is perhaps even more capacity than the one that you would initially find at the commune level of government. But the experience has been really, really good.
The role ADB in this whole process, like I said, we have a strategic partnership with the Asian Development Bank, right? It's clear, it's a 3-year, 2011-2013. There are outcomes that's supposed to be delivered out of this process. In the area of D&D, where do you see your likely achievement in 3 years' time? You know, and hopefully it should be the stepping stone for a longer term involvement in the area of D&D.
Absolutely. We need to, for start, and if you would allow me, to say that we're at an early stage of decentralization reforms in the country, and this is a long-term process. This is not a project. This is a process that is...
it's a process. I like it.
It's a process.
It's a process.
And there's no ideal stage either. There is no model that we can bring from some other country and transplant to the Cambodia.
Best practice we do, no?
Best practices we do, exactly. And I think that one of the advantages of Cambodia right now is that they can learn from the experiences of countries in the region that have undergone rapid processes of decentralization, like the Philippines or Indonesia or others, and learn from those experiences as well. And although there are some critical principles that should guide and criteria that should guide policy formulation, then it is clear that we need to find, and the government is working hard on that, and I think making a really good job on it, finding the model for Cambodia, the one that is relevant to the political economy of the country. Having said that, the ADB, of course, has committed long-term support to this process of reforms. We are, as a bank, we're not alone in this effort. There's a large group of development partners that has pledged also very substantial commitment to this in the form of technical assistance and also financial assistance as well. There's been a long-term engagement from agencies of the United Nations system, and right now bilateral donors are taking, and for a few years already, a very important role as well, like the German cooperation or the Swedish cooperation as well. So there is a large group of development partners that are aligned perfectly well with the government plans for decentralization. In terms of the ADB, what we are discussing with the government right now, over the last several years, we have had several initiatives in support of the process. First, we assisted with the construction of the commune centers.
Yes, indeed. I go to a province, I see this beautiful initially house. Oh my God! But then you go to the next place, you see the same thing, which is beautiful. Give a sense of pride, you know.
That's I think is a key word, and something that makes us feel really happy. They have served those centers actually as a catalyst for commune participation as well. They're multi-purpose as well. They don't only serve for the commune business, but for meetings of community service organizations, and
so like
really dynamized. Exactly. It was really beautiful to see whenever I go out to the rural areas. So that was our first initiative. More recently, we have been focusing on providing technical assistance, both to the National Committee for Democratic Development at the national level, which is the coordinating institution for decentralization and deconcentration reforms, and also to the Ministry of Economy and Finance in several aspects related to decentralization. And currently, we're in conversations with the government to agree on a larger program of assistance that will include both financial assistance for the finalization of the policy and the regulatory framework, the policy documents and the laws and regulations that should guide the process, for the capacity development of local civil servants, which is an important pillar of this. In the effort that will be required to build those capacities for self-government and for the transfer of that authority will be large.
In the excuse me if I interrupt, I just couldn't help, but I'm thinking that, you know, this beautiful council hall there, they must have played a good role during election, you know, national election or the communal election. That's a place where it takes place, no?
Yes, indeed.
So in a way, it's good that people see themselves, they're going to a nice place, well structured, well organized, and be part of their commune, you know. I think psychologically it's good.
It is good. I think it's an opportunity to, there's so much power and potential at the local level, and it can be dynamized and catalyzed with these reforms. Again, as I was saying, this is a process, this is not a project. This is going to transform the way service delivery is done in Cambodia for the next generation.
In terms of best practice, what other country that you have seen or ADB have worked with that have succeeded or have not succeeded for that matter, right?
I come from a country, Spain, where we...
That succeed?
Well, you see, there's no black or white. There's a lot of gray areas in here.
And that's why I like you say, it's a process.
It's a process. We've been decentralizing for 35 years. We still haven't gotten it right. But we've done a few good things. And when I have to refer to experiences in the area that I am more familiar with, for instance, Indonesia is a country where there's been a sustained emphasis in clarifying the first question or answering the first question of decentralization, which is who does what.
Ah, okay.
Which level of government is responsible for which service?
Yeah.
Because without that clarity, then we have problems in terms of service delivery.
And have they succeeded in answering that?
They have succeeded to a large extent, and the most important thing is that that is an issue that is always on the debate, on the technical debate about decentralization. In a country recently that has been making important effort on the definition of adequate grant mechanisms, that has been also Indonesia, but in Philippines as well. Not only developing systems of transfers, I mean, funds allocation from the central government to local governments that allow for an equalization of resources so that everybody can provide at least a similar quality of services and coverage of services, but also introducing incentives for revenue generation at the local level and others.
Expenditure is important. Revenue is easy to collect, right? Everybody happy to collect.
I don't think a lot of people will be will be agreeing with that.
Is that right? Is that right? But expenditure, I think that's probably the most controversial, because easy to collect, but then how about expending? I need expenditure, to make my council run.
Exactly, and there is a series of mechanisms that should be in place and will be in place in the next few months. We think. Defining the sources of funds that will be available for the local governments, and they should include three main pillars, perhaps. One of them is fiscal transfers. Transfers of funds from the central government to the local governments that are certainly unconditional in nature, so that the local governments, local levels of administration have some decision-making power over which projects to finance. And the second one is in the future, but we know that the government is already working on this. We will need to define tax and non-tax revenue sources for local levels of administration. There is a need to include the subnational administrations in the effort of collecting revenues in the country as well, because that is a great accountability mechanism as well. People will pay more gladly their contributions to certain public services if they know that that money is going to be employed in delivering the services that they have an opportunity to decide upon.
I see.
So that's a great accountability mechanism, and is one of the key pillars of decentralization that is also a key pillar of the government strategy.
We're running out of time. Juan, I'd like to ask you for a few last words that you want to be remembered. Bear in mind, I say this because you say that, look, we're just in the early part of the process. It will take time, right? But where would you like to see Cambodia 5 years down the road when you come back 5 years from a mission somewhere else? You say, I was here in 2011, now in 2016, wow, oh my God, right? So either way.
Right. Well, I will have to refer then to the goals of the National Program for Subnational Democratic Development of the government. I think it's very clearly defined there that the vision and the main goal for these reforms is to have democratic, inclusive growth and equitable growth at the local level through subnational administrations that are able to deliver services efficiently and that also have the capacity to collect their own revenues. I think this process, as I mentioned earlier, is going to transform Cambodia in many different ways, and we're definitely very excited to be one of the partners that will be able to support it.
Well, Juan, I thank you so much for coming and really inject all these sophisticated concepts, which I think I can get about 5%.
Oh.
That, right? But next time I'll get another 5, and by the time I see you in 2013 or so, I should say, look, I know enough about decentralization to engage you without referring to my note, right? But no, seriously, I think it's important, the partnership between the Asian Development Bank and the royal government in the pursuit of I like your quote to say equitable development. This is important. Cambodia is primarily an agrarian society. It means that most of our people live in the countryside, and we will. It's just a matter of will. We will succeed in this deconcentration, decentralization process for the better, because the service we should be rendered is out there for the 80-some people percent of the Cambodian people who live in the countryside. So I think on that note, I want to say thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you very much.
And I hope to see you again next time. Yes.
Hopefully before 2013.
Good. Well, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, before I close, I can't help but remember my first meetings, my first job in Cambodia, way back in sometime in November 1993. That was the first meeting I had was with the UNDP at the time, and it was with the first intermission meeting on administrative reform. That was right after the peace process, right after the formation government, and I happened to be, asked to join, in that meeting with UNDP there. And 93, 2011, we were 18-year, time span, and we come a long way. And I look forward to see this progress accelerated, I would say, in a much more quantum leap in the near future. So once again, Juan, thank you so much. And I also want to say thank you to the Asian Development Bank also for being side by side with the Royal Government in this endeavor to improve the life of our Cambodians.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. Good night.